Sorry about that. Sorry about that, I was just having a wee. I've just given a kind of a brief overview of the history. The books have got it in much greater detail, because I want to concentrate on what's happening now, because this has been leading somewhere, and it's been leading to an ever-expanding level of power that this network has until it can play its final card it's looking for, which is to take the planet over and dictate from a central point. It still is not there, and this period we're in now of hectic activity on their behalf around the world is part of the final push towards that. And what I want to do is spend in this section talking about what's happening today and how the world's manipulated today and what's going on. I thought that was a great phrase, me. Politics may not be the oldest profession, but the results are the same. It's kind of funny, that word politics. It comes from a word meaning, poly, meaning many, and ticks, meaning blood-sucking insects. I think it's a wonderful kind of word for me. It's inspired, really. And this is going to be quite a chunk that I'm going to do now, and then we'll take a dinner break for an hour before the last section. But it's a long section because it all dovetails and connects into everything else. 9/11, Afghanistan, Iraq, and what's happening now is a continuous story, and I want to do it in that way. But first of all, how is the few capable of creating a situation in which a prat like this is in power and going walkabout around the world with other people? Well, because he is not, and his like are not, like Blair, are not at the top of the decision-making pyramid. Oh, President Bush, most powerful man in the world. Oh, yes. Just seen a pig fly across the back. I mean, come on. What they do is that they, in that upper level of the global pyramid, they are the people that control the banking system, own the media, and the transnational corporations generate the mega bucks, and they use that to place into positions of apparent power presidents, prime ministers, head of the World Bank, head of NATO, and all that stuff. And they are not actually in power at all, except that over those below them. They are put in there to administer this secret agenda for the centralization of global power into place. And this is why they do not listen to what the public want, because that's not who they're answering to. Why don't Blair listen? Because he's not there to listen. He's there to introduce an agenda, and that's why he does it whatever. This is the structure that they're looking for. They want a world government which would take all the major decisions in the world, that would administer a world central bank, a world army, and a microchipped population, which is coming in more and more. I'll talk about it in a second. Under that, they want 4 super-states. The European Union, of course, was the first, so it's more advanced, and they're about to advance it even more, take away basically British sovereignty, but don't worry, it's only a tidying up exercise. Peter Hain told me, must be true. And that was evolved out of a free trade area called the common market. Now, this is one of the techniques. I call it the stepping stone technique, or I can also call it the totalitarian tiptoe. And it works like this. You know that's where you're going, But you know, if you go from here to there in one great leap, the change is so great, people are going to say, hey, what's going on here? What's going on? So what you do is you go there in little steps. And every step is projected at the public as unconnected with the other steps. So, after the last war, would we have joined a centralized superstate in Europe? People have just fought to stop that against Hitler and all that stuff. Are you kidding? Oh, no, we don't mean that. We want a free trade area. That's all we want. Oh, good for jobs. Oh, all right then. And you join that. And then, oh, wouldn't it be nice? It'd be much more, this free trade area, be much more kind of effective and well run if we had a few more kind of centralized powers and stuff like that. And hey, and eventually you look back and you realize that the free trade area, just good for trade, mate, has become step by step a centralized superstate. They want the American Union, the whole of the Americas, to be the same as the European Union. I wrote in a book years ago about this, that they wanted to evolve the NAFTA free trade zone, which is North America, Canada, United States, and also Mexico. And they wanted to expand it to the whole of the Americas. Just after Bush became president, he went to the Summit of the Americas in Quebec, Canada, where the heads of the American countries agreed that that expansion would happen around 2005. The Pacific Union is designed to be the Asia, kind of Australia kind of area of the world. That free trade zone, which is called APEC, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, is designed to evolve into the Pacific Union. And very recently, the last couple of years, the Organization of African Unity changed its name to the African Union. And what these are organizations designed to encompass all the countries of that region and dictate to them from a central point. Very simple why. If there's a few of you and you want to control the many, you have to centralize decision making. The more diverse points of decision making there are, the less control you're going to have over them. So it's like being on a stage with loads of sticks with plates spinning on them. I'm running around trying to keep them going. It's a heck of a job, and eventually the plates are going to start falling. What I want, ideally, is one big plate on one big stick, and I can stand there and do that from a central point indefinitely. That's why they want to centralize power. And the centralization of the European Union is absolutely in line with the agenda. Under that, nation states and regions that will be nothing more than county councils in terms of power below that edifice, and below them, the people below that structure of imposition. Now, what I've just described with the European Union is fascism. Not just fascism, no, it's fascism, not just like a throwaway line. The very symbol of fascism, the fasci, is a mirror of the European Union and the structure that they want. The fasci symbolizes fascism, comes out of the Roman Empire, because these rods symbolize individuality tied together, ruled by the axe head here. This is the flag of Italy during the Second World War with Mussolini and what have you. Now, in the Congress building in Washington, you find the fasci, the very symbol from which the word fascism comes from. This is a secret society in America called the Knights of Columbus, Knights of Columba, Semiramis. And again, right at the heart is the fascist symbol. This is the symbol in the land of the free, land of the free and the home of the slave, in truth. More and more people in America are realizing that. But look, state of Colorado, land of the free, there's the fascist symbol. What's it doing there? Again, the same thing with the goddess of the French Republic. And when the village idiot makes his State of the Union address that someone else has written for him, axis of evil, behind him are two of the fascist symbols on the very home, it says, of freedom. And the way the European Union symbolizes fascism is because individuality is brought under the dictatorship of a central point, which is classic fascism. So this is what they want to create. And one of the, if not the jewel in the crown is the microchipped population. When I met that CIA scientist who had the patch on his chest, he said to me at the end, he said, look, just tell people if they say no to only one thing, tell them to say no to the microchip. Because he said it's not just about electronic tagging, as some people are beginning to wake up, realize that it is at one level. He said it's not the messages going from the chip to the computer that are most to be concerned about. It's the messages coming the other way. He told me that outside the public arena, microchips are ready to be introduced, and they're already being introduced in America in a big way, thousands and thousands of people since 9/11. And the technology is designed to have the emotional, mental, and physical level of people manipulated and dictated to from the computer to the chip. And he said that they can isolate an individual, or they can do it en masse. They can make you docile, they can make you aggressive, they can make you sexually suppressed, sexually high, whatever. And I had an experience years ago when I had this Sky television thing. And I wanted to take another channel. So what I thought was that I would ring up and I'd give them a credit card number and they'd put another card in the bloody post, you know, simple thing. So I called Scotland, I think it was in them days, might still be. I talked to this guy and I said, look, I want to take this other channel. So he said, okay, took a credit card number and he said, okay, look at the screen. And he said, tell me what you see. Bloody channel came up in front of my eyes. So it's the obvious question, how do you do that? He said, I've just reprogrammed the card in your machine from Scotland. And that's what this guy was talking about in terms of the chip. And it's coming in more and more, the bar-coded people. Now what this scientist told me was how small the chips are outside the public arena, small enough to be put in through hypodermic needles in vaccination programs. And not long after that is a picture from Huddersfield University, massively blown up, of course, and that's how small the chips have become that we're being allowed to see, never mind those that actually exist outside of public sight. Again, the bar-coded person. Now, in America, they call these the Jacobs family. They were given massive publicity on primetime television. I was in America at the time, because after 9/11, they wanted to be microchipped because they felt safer. God, obviously doesn't do a lot for the mind, though. And one of the chips that I mentioned in a book called Children of the Matrix was actually the one that they were microchipped with. And in this country, hey, what about this guy, hey? What about this guy? What happens to people when they get into these positions of power? This is a left-wing firebrand leader of Sheffield Council. Do you remember that? And now he's taking major basic freedoms away. Now, what we're being faced with is the identity card, except this is the Orwellian world now, so it's not an identity card. It's an entitlement card. Hey, that's all right. What's the entitlement card do? It registers your identity. Oh, gotcha, yes. And the ID card is the stepping stone, the totalitarian tiptoe to microchip people in Britain. God, what are you doing, mate? And again, this is the structure by which they run the show, by controlling from the top down these unconnected, apparently, areas of life, and in fact, one agenda coming down through all of them. And also, let me just go back on that. Just want to make a point on that. Orla, I don't want to see you again. Thanks, Dave, mate. Thank you. Enough. What this does, and it's a very important point to make, you know, right across society, there are people in pressure groups, understandably, good on you, who are challenging the imposition of additives in food, of additives in water, of genetically modified food. They're challenging the impositions and the appalling injustice of the banking system. They're talking about third world debt. All these different pressure groups are fighting different issues. What we need to appreciate, if we're really going to come together and focus together, is that the force each of them are challenging is the same force. That's the key. So, GM foods, oh, we're going to have a trial and see what happens. It's decided it's going to come in unless we say no. And what you do, what is it about? One of the major Illuminati companies in the world that comes up in my research constantly, Monsanto. It's given us some wonderful things, Monsanto. And what is it about? It's about playing with the genetics of the human body for reasons of suppressing our ability to express our true infinite genius and oneness of all, connecting with other dimensions of ourself, not some spaceship, other dimensions of ourselves in our infinite mind. And also, it is about putting patents on seeds that farmers in the poorest countries of the world will have to pay the transnationals for to use to scratch a living of survival. That's what it's about. And for a Labour government, party of the people, to be supporting this just shows who's really in control of that party. Then, have you noticed Blair now wants to bring in fluoride in the water, and of course all around the world they're doing that. In America, fluoride in the water, good for teeth. Crap! In Toronto, there's a guy called Lineback who was one of the greatest supporters of fluoride in the water. He's the head of dentistry at Toronto University. He's come out now and said, for God's sake, don't have it. And as he was saying, they've had it in the water for years, decades in Toronto. They don't have it in the water in Vancouver. There are fewer cavities by a mile per head of population in Vancouver than there are in Toronto. Hey, it's good for teeth. Wait, let's see what it's really about. Do you know when the fluoride was first put in drinking water? In the Nazi concentration camp. Stands back in amazement, can't believe it. This is Charles Perkins, a chemist, who wrote to the Lee Foundation for Nutritional Research, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in 1954, and this is what he wrote. In the 1930s, Hitler and the German Nazis envisaged a world to be dominated and controlled by a Nazi philosophy of pan-Germanism. The German chemists worked out a very ingenious and far-reaching plan of mass control, which was submitted to and adopted by the German General Staff. This plan was to control the population in any given area through mass medication of drinking water supplies. By this method, they could control the population in whole areas, reduce population by water medication that would induce sterility in women, and so on. In this scheme of mass control, sodium fluoride occupied a prominent place. That's what it's about. Vaccinations, same bloody thing. And then, this is a little cameo of how those that are orchestrating the secret agenda are also involved in bringing it into the movie. Aspartame or aspartame, 200 times more sweet than sugar, and it is lethal stuff. They actually tell American Air Force pilots not to drink soft drinks because it affects their ability to fly. Why? Because of the aspartame in it. It's now more and more in foods of all kinds. And they even have aspartame disease. It is a mind suppressant among many other things. Hey, who was the man who brought aspartame to the world by manipulating the authorities in America by putting people who supported him and his aspartame policies in positions of power to make that decision and removing those that would not? Oh, aspartame man. Donald Rumsfeld, who was put into Searle Pharmaceuticals in America using his contacts in the Reagan-Bush administration to get aspartame permission to be used in food against all the independent data. Then who did he sell out to for $12 million of his own money? Monsanto, who now run the show. I never heard that on ITN. I'm really staggered I never heard that. And it's this that allows all these different elements, apparently unconnected, to be introduced in the agenda. Now, this is a key for anyone that's not heard me speak before. This is perhaps the most important thing anyone can remember about this manipulation. It is the manipulation technique that has advanced this agenda and continues to more than any other mass mind control technique. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry has a Latin motto, ordo ab chaos, which means order out of chaos. Create the chaos, destroy the status quo by creating the chaos, and then you can offer your new order out of the chaos and replace the previous status quo. I call it problem, reaction, solution. Classic. What you do, you've got one force that is manipulating through two sides. Again, you want to control the game, control two sides, you know what the outcome's going to be pretty much. So this Illuminati, they put and funded both sides in the Second World War. Joseph Stalin was one of their front men. Winston Churchill was one of their front men. He comes from the an offshoot of the very aristocratic Marlborough bloodline at Blenheim Palace. And in America, one of the greatest front men of the 20th century for the Illuminati in that country, as I said earlier, Franklin Roosevelt. Over here, the Teutonic Knights wing of the Illuminati had created the Nazi Party and brought them to power. What you do then is you play them off against each other. Problem, reaction, solution. You create the conflict of the Second World War, and then people say, understandably, after 2 world wars in such a short time, they are mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted. And they say, something must be done, this can't go on, what are they going to do about it? At that point, they who have created the problem offer the solutions to the problems they've created. Hey, we want the European Union, we want the World Bank, we want the IMF, all of which are Illuminati controlled. And we want to centralize power under the United Nations, which is a stalking horse, a stepping stone to the world government. What happens every time with problem, reaction, solution is the same thing. First of all, you covertly create the problem. Crucially at this point, you have to divert public attention from asking open-mindedly, who's behind this sodding thing that's going on? So immediately, as soon as you can, you name the villain. When you kill Kennedy in 1963, you name Lee Harvey Oswald, who, unless he had a gun that shot bullets that then went round and went back again, could not possibly have killed Kennedy. Little nicety, a lot of people miss that in Washington, it seems. When you kill all those people on 9/11, you immediately name bin Laden. And I've got the tapes. They were naming him on the television networks immediately after those planes hit. In the hour or so afterwards, they were wheeling people on from Congress saying, oh, I've got a contact in the FBI. They say they think it's bin Laden, bin Laden, bin Laden, bin Laden. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to sell your version of the problem you've covertly created to the people. Now, if we had a media worth the name, if we had journalists, there are honorable exceptions, but oh my God, so few. If we had journalists that really were journalists, problem, reaction, solution would break down immediately. Because what would happen is the official version of the story would be given to the journalist to pass to the public. Instead of that, they'd say, hold on a minute, let's have a look at this. Let's investigate this. Does this add up? Does that add up? How does that work out? And they would communicate their findings to the people. And I know from my own research over the years, it takes very little time to take these official stories apart. There's not one strand of 9/11 that fits with another. I'll come to in a second. But what happens instead of that is the journalistic profession overwhelmingly has become a public relations office for the official version of events. So what happens is the officials, it's so important this. The official version gets given to the journalists and it gets passed on virtually undiluted to the public. There's not one strand of the official 9/11 story that hasn't come from official source. Pentagon sources say that, White House sources say that. And so you sell your manufactured movie to the people and you want the people to say, this can't go on, something must be done, what are they going to do about it? Crucially, you want the people outraged and you want them frightened. Because once people are in fear, they look outside of themselves for people to protect them from what they've been manipulated to fear. Now, once they've said that to you, do something, you can play your sting, which is offering the solutions to the problems you have created, which are changes in legislation that take away more basic freedoms, and away we go, the agenda. That's problem, reaction, solution. It's happening all the time. 9/11 was the most classic example of it, the most blatant, crystal clear example of it you can imagine. I've gone in the book here in great detail, but I'm going to go through it, and that moment when those planes hit was in effect the trigger to push this agenda on in leaps and bounds, which is what we've seen since and what we're seeing now. It allows, as Cheney said, a war to start, which he said probably wouldn't end in our lifetimes. And what is this war? It is a war on terrorism, a war that can never ever said to have been won. How can it? Not that any war is won, that's an illusion as well. But they've got a situation, thanks to 9/11, in which they can target any country as a terrorist state and go in and conquer it, and therefore bring about the list of conquests that has been in the pipeline for a long time. Now, does anyone really believe George Bush is calling the tune here? I mean, you know, this guy is further up the Illuminati chain by a mile than this fella, and also behind him is his father, George Bush. As presidents go, presidents not really very high in the hierarchy. They're high enough to be in awareness, but not really high. This guy was as high as any that I've come across in modern times anyway. And he's had 3 terms as President of the United States, 2 officially under Reagan, then his own. Clinton is subordinate to this guy in the hierarchy, and then comes his son. This fellow is real important in what's going on in the background of all this. And this is kind of well symbolized by some of this stuff. This is very symbolic of what's actually going on. And then there's Tony Blair. Tony Blair. That's love, isn't it? You can see it in the eyes. That is deep, deep love. Tony Blair is a placeman by the same network that controls him. Therefore, they both act in unison no matter what the hell the people in their countries are saying. This is a wonderful example of 9/11, but also the world we're living in general. And in the Alice in Wonderland books, nothing would be what it is because everything would be what it isn't. And contrary-wise, what it is, it wouldn't be, and what it wouldn't be, it would, you see. Smoke and mirrors. Everything that says one thing means another all the time. Everything needs reversing. And this has happened many, many times. 60 years before 9/11, we had Pearl Harbor. Franklin Roosevelt, when he went for his second term in office, he had to sell himself to the people. The people did not want their children to go into another war in Europe so soon after the carnage of the first one. So he ain't going to say, hey, we're going to send the troops into Europe and fight in that war. No, we're not having you, Franklin. Bugger off, mate. So what does he say? If you read his speeches, over and over again, he said, mothers of America, I tell you, your sons are not going to fight in that war in Europe, not if I'm president. Oh, we'll have you, Franklin. So he gets in office, but he knows they're going to fight in another war in Europe. But how can he pull it off and still be the good guy? As a number of books, both immediately after the war and some since, have shown in great detail, Japan was manipulated to attack Pearl Harbor. There were sanctions on oil and other things, and also this guy had at least 8 to 10 different intelligence confirmations that Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, was going to be attacked. Nothing was done. Why? Because they wanted it to happen. And it happened, and outrage, and America's in the war, and he's in the clear. Now, let me just read you something. Between the wars, people say, why do Blair and Bush lie so much? They don't lie so much, they lie all the time, and there's a reason for it. It is because they are lying constantly because they are giving constantly cover stories to justify the secret agenda's introduction. That's why they're lying all the time. This came to light between the wars. It was called Propaganda in the Next War, and it came out of London, not surprisingly, where a lot of this stuff gets orchestrated from. Not Tony Blair's government, I'm talking about the Center of the Secret Society web. And one of the congressmen held this up and said, what the hell is this about between the wars? And nothing was done. Well, this is what it said. To persuade her, the United States, to take our part in another war will be much more difficult, so difficult as to be unlikely to succeed. It will need a definite threat to America, a threat, moreover, which will have to be brought home to every citizen before the Republic again take arms in an external quarrel. The position will be naturally considerably eased if Japan was involved, and this might and probably would bring America in without much further ado. At any rate, it would be a natural and obvious effect of our propagandists to achieve this, just as in the Great War they succeeded in embroiling the United States with Germany. Fortunately, with America, our propaganda is on firm ground. We can be entirely sincere, as our main plank will be the old democratic one. We must clearly enunciate our belief in the democratic form of government. Have we heard this somewhere before recently? And our firm resolve to adhere to the old goddess of democracy routine. The whole Pearl Harbor was to bring America into the war. 6 years on, before 9/11. Oklahoma revisited. That's what 9/11 was, and then some. They blamed it on Timothy McVeigh. Not saying he wasn't involved, but unless the laws of physics were suspended in Oklahoma that morning, a fuel fertilizer device in a Ryder truck could not have caused that damage. I'm not saying that. Bomb explosive experts are saying that, like retired Brigadier Ben Partin, who spent a lifetime in explosives and weapons development in the United States military. He wrote a 500-page report, sent it to every major media outlet, all the people in Congress, saying that there is no way in the world that a fuel fertilizer device, which was only 1,400 pounds to start with, and then it got bigger, the bigger the gap of credibility. The last time I heard it was about 7,000 pounds. It's amazing how you can change the size of a bomb with a press release. It's incredible. And as he pointed out, the only way, and there are other reports to support this, the only way that building could have fallen is with devices on the pillars inside the building. And how kind of funny, as some of the people that lost children in that bombing have been witness to, when they brought their kids to see them for the last time to the nursery there, that the bomb squad were around that building in full bomb squad gear an hour and a half before the bomb went off. And it was completely denied until the number of witnesses made denial completely uncredible. And they said, oh yeah, but it was a training exercise. And some brave journalists, and there are some journalists out there, real ones, working on the local television stations in Oklahoma, and I've seen the tapes. They established, first of all, that there was footage from the videos around the building, the business videos and the street videos, surveillance videos, that showed the Ryder truck being parked and showed not one man in it, a man who looked like McVeigh, but also a guy that became known as John Doe 2, and those tapes have never been made public. First of all, the FBI said we can't under national security. Then they said, we can't release them because it will affect McVeigh's trial. Now, if it only showed McVeigh, you play them at the trial, game, set, and match. Okay, see you in the bar. They didn't. And now they're saying they can't ever release them. Why? If it just shows the story they're asking us to believe. The other thing is that in the official story, McVeigh came with a guy and sussed out the building because he wanted, the official story goes, to attack the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms in America that was involved with the Waco slaughter a few years before, 93, wasn't it? And so he wanted to attack them on the anniversary, and that was the official story. Well, why did he park the Ryder truck about as far from their office in that building as you can get when he could have parked it closer? If he had been sussing the building out, how come that morning he drives the Ryder truck into a garage, what they call in America a gas station, petrol station, and he asked the guy the way to the Murrah building? so connecting himself, the Ryder truck, and the Murrah building in one sentence. Why, when he's just blown 168 people away, does he say it's a fair cop, Gov, even though he's armed, when he's stopped for a driving offence and arrested? Why was he arrested? For the same reason that for no reason Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested or attempted to be arrested in the theatre that he ran to after he was supposed to have killed Kennedy but didn't. This led to a massive increase in surveillance and control of the people. Within 24 hours of this, Bill Clinton was calling for an easing of restrictions on the military's involvement in domestic law enforcement, all of which has been advanced as a result of 9/11. And interestingly, you could easily find out what caused that explosion in the Murrah building. All you have to do is get independent experts to analyze the rubble, and they'll tell you basically where the bombs are and what they were. Instead of that, that rubble was taken away by a company called Controlled Demolition Group, and it was put under armed guard behind a fence, guarded by an organization called Wachenhut, which is run by CIA and FBI operatives, and Wachenhut is absolutely there with the Bush family. And as a result of that, independent experts were not able to establish what caused it. Why? Because their official stories are nonsense. And this is something I've found over the years as little kind of telltale signs. When showing us something or letting us hear something would support the official story, we see and hear it. When something, seeing or hearing something would destroy the official story, we're not allowed to see and hear it. Big red flag that in the way that they operate. Therefore, Tony, can we see this intelligence report about the weapons of mass destruction? Oh, no. Why? Of course we can't. Now, to understand 9/11 is to understand the background to the Bush family. I mean, they're not just George W. Bush. They go back a long way in this manipulation. This guy is called Prescott Bush. He was an executive of a company run by a guy called E. Edward Harriman. Prescott Bush, not just highlighted in my books, but by others, and there's a guy at the Holocaust Museum in Florida called John Loftus who's gone public on this also. The Harriman organization had a company called the Union Banking Corporation, the UBC, which was basically run by Prescott Bush, the present president's grandfather. And in the run-up to the Second World War, this company interfaced with the network of a banking and steel magnate called Fritz Thyssen in Europe. They were basically locked into the UBC, both of them. And so through the UBC, vast amounts of money was funneled out of America from the Illuminati families like the Harrimans and the Bushes and the Rockefellers into the coffers of the German Nazi Party to be used to do what they did. Interestingly, how many people realize that when you talk about race purity and all this stuff with Hitler, Hitler's race purity expert was called Ernst Rudin. He occupied the whole floor of a university doing his racial purity insanity. That was paid for by the Rockefeller family in America. There are no us and them in the Illuminati. They just do whatever's necessary to bring something about. He was also involved in two other companies that were shut down when the war started under the Trading with the Enemy Act because they were Nazi companies. And there's the next two generations of that family. Now, to understand some of the background to the 9/11 and what's followed, we need to understand something called the Carlyle Group. The Carlyle Group chairman is Frank Carlucci, former number 2 at the CIA, thrown out of 2 African countries for being involved in assassination attempts, and a man who you wouldn't trust to tell you the time. Carlucci is, like I say, chairman of the Carlyle Group, which is a company that is very big in armaments. Many other things too, but very, very big in armaments. So every time there's a flipping war, the Carlyle Group, which America's involved in, the Carlyle Group make enormous amounts of money, even on that level of money. He, Father George Bush, is a major player in the Carlyle Group, as is James Baker, who was Secretary of State to Father George during the first Gulf War in 1991. These people and their company had very close associations with the bin Laden family, who were investors in the Carlyle Group until it was exposed, and then apparently withdrew their money after 9/11 because of the bad publicity. Frank Carlucci, number 2 at the CIA, head of the Carlyle Group, was described as my mentor by Colin Powell, who is the Secretary of State. I wonder if the Carlyle Group has any influence at the Secretary of State's department. I wonder. And here we have Frank Carlucci again. He was a roommate at Yale, home of the Skull and Bones Society, of this guy, the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, and James Baker was a classmate of Rumsfeld at Yale. Again, the same network together behind the scenes, orchestrating what the public do not see. George Bush the father has made excursions, denied but now having to be accepted, to the bin Laden family at Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The bin Laden family run this massive construction company in the Middle East, and he is an advisor financially to the royal family of Saudi Arabia on behalf of the Carlyle Group. Now, this guy's first oil company, George W. Bush, was a Busto Oil, very appropriately named, a Busto Energy, because everything this guy touched went to Busto. But he happened to always come out of it okay, and another company started while the shareholders lost the money. Well, one of the investors in our Busto Energy was Salem bin Laden, head of the bin Laden construction family, who died in a aircraft crash in Texas. It's amazing when you get close to the Bush family, flying becomes more dangerous. And as I say, the bin Laden family also were investors in the Carlyle Group right up to and across 9/11. And this is how ludicrous it gets. Do you remember when that bomb went off and destroyed that military quarters for the US in Saudi Arabia called the Khobar Towers? And the State Department in America blamed the bomb on Osama bin Laden. Who got the contract to rebuild it? Bin Laden Construction. You couldn't make it up. It's all in the bloody family, these people. Have you noticed a little common theme building up here? We've got to go in there to get bin Laden. He's the one person they don't get. They get little children and they blow them apart, but not bin Laden. Hey, we've got to go in there and get Saddam Hussein. They blow up more little children. And Saddam, oh, he's got away. Anyway, there's so many Saddam Husseins, you wouldn't know if you got the right one anyway. Well, check it out, mate, like anyone else would do. Now, this is what we were told: we must get bin Laden. That's what George Bush said. Oh, really? The Newsnight program did an investigation into the connections between the Bush family and the bin Laden family, and particularly the way that Bush was suppressing investigation into the bin Laden family in America in relation to funding the Al-Qaeda network. And they came up with this document, FBI document, which is code for a case type involving national security, and investigated by the Washington Field Office of Special Agents. The document was an investigation into Abdullah bin Laden, the treasurer of WAMI, which is a, quote, suspected terrorist organization, according to the State Department in America, and this document was given to the Newsnight program. Greg Palast, another journalist worth the name, working for Newsnight, said this on the investigation. I received a phone call from a high-placed member of a U.S. intelligence agency. He tells me that while there's always been constraints on investigating Saudis, under George Bush it's gotten much worse. After the elections, the agencies were told to back off investigating the bin Ladens and Saudi royals, and that angered agents. Now, since then, FBI agents have actually taken out lawsuits against the FBI. The guy called David Icke, a lawyer out of Chicago that's working with this, because of the way they were stopped from investigating this whole area of research in the run-up to 9/11. This was a guy interviewed on the same Newsnight report, Michael Springman, the U.S. consulate in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, during the presidency of Father George Bush. This is what he said on camera. In Saudi Arabia, I was repeatedly ordered by high-level State Department officials to issue visas to unqualified applicants. These were essentially people who had no ties either to Saudi Arabia or their own country. I complained bitterly at the time there. I returned to the US, I complained to the State Department here, to the General Accounting Office, to the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, and to the Inspector General's office. I was met with silence. What I was protesting was in reality an effort to bring recruits rounded up by Osama bin Laden to the US for terrorist training by the CIA. They would then be returned to Afghanistan to fight against the then Soviets. The Al-Qaeda network, which actually created by the CIA and Osama bin Laden, put in there to run it on their behalf. Now, immediately after 9/11, while they are arresting thousands of people across America without charge, without a trial, and without even access to a lawyer, just because they were at an Arab face, as Greg Pallas pointed out, a private chartered plane load of the bin Laden family was flown out back to Saudi Arabia, out of, ironically, Boston Logan Airport, to get out of the heat. Why? Because of associations between the two. The Carlyle Group is also, was also connected in terms of its personnel into the Bank of Crooks and Criminals International. You remember that, the BCCI? He was involved in that, and he was also, as president, involved in covering up what really that was about. In Britain, John Major was Prime Minister, and he was involved in this country in covering up what that was all about. He are now major players in the Carlyle Group, John Major being the head of it in Europe. Then we get Khalid bin Mahfouz, who was the 20% major shareholder in the BCCI and named by the Clinton State Department as a funder of bin Laden. Khalid bin Mahfouz was an investor in Harken Energy, another George W. Bush oil company, and was heavily connected into the Carlyle Group of George W. Bush. These two, Mohammed Alamoudi, who has oil connections to him, their companies, also named by the State Department as a funder of bin Laden, and he too connects into the Bush family. This fella here, the current ambassador of America to Britain, is the grandson of William S. Farish. He's William S. Farish III. William S. Farish was the president of Standard Oil, the Rockefeller Company, when it was exposed as supplying the Nazis with oil during the Second World War. He is a very close friend of the Queen of England. She goes to his ranch in Kentucky to breed her horses, and he is a long-time family associate of the Bush family. All these Bush associates are placed in the key positions to orchestrate the war on terrorism. This is another man. This is the guy you see often saying why we should go in and blow another country apart because we must stop terrorism. John Negroponte, the UN ambassador of the United States. This is what John Pilger wrote in the New Statesman about this guy. How appropriate that John Negroponte is Bush's ambassador to the United Nations. This week he delivered America's threat to the world that it may require to attack more and more countries. As U.S. ambassador to Honduras in the early 1980s, Negroponte oversaw American funding of the regime's death squads, known as Battalion 316, that wiped out the democratic opposition while the CIA ran its Contra war of terror against neighboring Nicaragua. Murdering teachers and slitting the throats of midwives were a speciality. This is the mentality that is running the war on terrorism. So, 9/11, the classic problem, reaction, solution. This guy gave the key post-9/11 statement immediately after it happened. He said this: "This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken, the pieces are in flux, soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us." Problem, reaction, solution. The problem. The problem, 4 aircraft virtually simultaneously hijacked over a period of just over 2 hours in North American airspace. Nothing done that made any difference over 2 hours to what unfolded. This guy, Leroy Fletcher Prouty, worked in special operations in the US government at the time of the Kennedy administration in the 60s. And he said something very profound. He was talking about assassinations, but my goodness me, does it apply to things like 9/11. He said, "No one has to direct an assassination, it happens. The active role is played secretly by permitting it to happen. This is the greatest single clue. Who has the power to call off or reduce the usual security precautions?" Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Princess Diana, every time that as the assassination took place, the usual security was withdrawn. And look at other assassinations, it happens over and over again. Why? Because if you don't withdraw the security, the assassination can't happen. That's why he's talking about it being such a telltale sign. Now, who should have reacted to what was happening in the air over North America in that 2 hours? Well, it's an organization called NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, that's supposed to protect the airspace of North America, including Canada, from attack. This is its own website. It says that they are partners in protecting our homelands, deter, detect, and defend against air and space threats to North America. I just wonder, feeling it in the water, if 4 planes simultaneously hijacked in North American airspace could possibly constitute a threat to North America. I feel it could somewhere. So where were they? They did nothing in that whole period that made any difference to events, and yet other days they do. This is Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. 2,000 feet into that granite mountain is the state of the state of the state of the state of the art of tracking technology on planet Earth today, run by NORAD and others associated organizations. It's from there that they connect into all the satellites. They claim and boast on their own website that they know if a missile takes off anywhere in the world. They have 8,000 pieces of debris in space that they're constantly monitoring, access to the satellite network. When they say, again in their own website, American troops are fighting abroad, like in Iraq, they are actually doing the logistics. When the space shuttle takes off and goes off, it is actually orchestrated from here in many ways in terms of tracking and what have you. They have direct lines to the Pentagon that can survive a nuclear attack. In the 2 hours that this was going on in the airspace of North America, they said no one told them soon enough. Oh, I didn't see it. I was watching the telly at the time, like, you know. Now here, this is from Airman magazine, right? There's this technology called Global Hawk, I'll get to shortly, which is an unmanned surveillance plane. This is what this plane is capable of. On an early test, for example, Global Hawk flew at 56,000 feet over the Naval Weapons Center at China Lake, California. The images it gathered were so clear that an electro-optical image stands out next to an F-16 fighter. An infrared image showed where concrete had cooled down from the shadow of a C-130 that had recently taken off from 56,000 feet. And they can't find bin Laden in Afghanistan? What? And they cannot track aircraft that have gone massively off course until someone tells them? Goodness me. Throughout that period, nothing happened to change events in any of these planes, and one of them in particular was absolutely outrageous. What's supposed to happen, and what happened 125 times in the year 2000, is that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, when anyone loses contact, air traffic controller, with a cockpit and or the transponder goes off, they are ordered by the regulations, and you can see them on the internet if you want to find them, to contact NORAD, whose job it then is to scramble jets to go up and look and see what the hell's going on. Because you don't want, particularly in crowded airspace of North America, especially the eastern side of it, planes going around without connection to the ground. 125 times that happened in the year 2000. In the 2 hours, the crucial 2 hours of September the 11th, nothing that made any difference. The case of Payne Stewart, the golfer, he took off in a plane, a light plane, Learjet, 1999, went up there, there was a compression problem, they all went unconscious. What happened? They lost contact clearly with the air traffic controller. He told NORAD, NORAD scrambled jets, and they escorted it across America and making sure that it was going to fall when it ran out of petrol, ran out of fuel, into a non-populated area. Exactly what happened, and they said that in the Pentagon, the command center in the Pentagon that's supposed to coordinate hijacks or problems in the sky actually was following on a screen across America. That's what happened with a Lear jet. A 757, 767, nothing. Ludicrous. But if the normal response was there, maybe it might not have happened the way it did. Interestingly, further investigation required, I feel, the head of security at the Federal Aviation Administration at that time was Michael Canavan, who, this guy, whose previous job was head of special operations and psychological warfare with the US military. Interesting change of career, I feel. I went back to all the people involved in the 9/11, all the airlines, the security people, NORAD, the FAA, and I learned a lot about the way the cover-ups are done. First of all, NORAD gave me a timeline for that day, and they agreed that the timeline was true, and if it is, the FAA, the government civilian part of this air traffic control, reaction or non-reaction on 9/11, has some stunning questions to answer, but has never been asked. Because the time they left it, after, not only after involving the planes that hit the World Trade Center, but after that had happened and other planes were lost in terms of contact and transponders, the time they left it was unbelievable. It's time enough for nothing to be done. And I'll tell you another thing that I found. What I did, I went to all these people. NORAD gave me a timeline, and they reacted a little bit. Every single body else, the airlines, everything, they said to me in unison, we can't answer your questions. We've been told that everything has to be taken to the FBI. You'll have to ask them. So what they do is they take all possibility of any information coming out that is not the official story, because you're centralizing the reaction to the official story. I then contacted the FBI, and they told me a guy to write to, and I sent them nearly 50 questions, basic questions about 9/11 and the inconsistencies in the official story. And they came back and said, I got a fax, in fact, 48 hours later from some government department in Washington saying, we cannot answer your questions because there is an ongoing investigation. And you'll have to wait until the files come available under the Freedom of Information Act, which can be years from now, it said. So what they do is they tell you the official story. There's no problem with the ongoing investigation when they give you that bugger. But when you want to ask questions about it, there's an ongoing investigation, we can't talk about it. And that's how they orchestrate it. And keep anybody talking about it that would go off message. In fact, do you remember, this bloody story, I sat in my front room and I watched a BBC newsreader tell me without bloody laughing, just after 9/11, that the FBI had found a passport from one of the hijackers a few blocks from ground zero. Now, I'm not a physics major, but fireball, paper passport, thousands of bodies that died in those towers never been found, within days, paper passport. I mean, was it singed? I mean, was it perfect? What was it? And the FBI called a press conference to say they'd found it. Why? They know that people do not retain detail. They retain an image, particularly from television, but newspapers as well. And therefore, what they do when they're feeding the cover story is they feed an image. And the image they wanted to feed at that time was the official story was true. So they call a news conference, we found this passport, one of the hijackers. Hey, they were right then, it was them bloody people. Hey! And then they shut up about it. Never mentioned again, because it's done its job. So what I did, I went back to New York police, who were also involved in this, and I said, I want to talk to someone about the hijacker's passport. So they get me on a guy called Detective Burns, I think his name was. And I said to him, excuse me, just out of interest, you know that passport you found, one of the hijackers? Yeah. Which of the hijackers did it belong to? Interesting question. I can't talk about that, it's an ongoing investigation. I said, well, look, you've said you found a passport, you've named the hijackers, how would it affect the ongoing investigation if you told me which one it belonged to? I don't know how it would affect the ongoing investigation, but it will affect the ongoing investigation because there's an ongoing investigation, and therefore we can't talk about it. And I said to him at the end, so there isn't one then? Okay. On the anniversary, on the anniversary of 9/11, an ITV documentary team asked the FBI that question too about the passport, and this was their reply. The hijacker's passport is a rumor that might be true. Oh, newspeak, there never was one. Just one of endless bloody lies. Now this is Flight 77 that took off from Washington Dulles Airport and was hijacked out there and then was brought back 45 minutes to strike the Pentagon. Some people say it didn't, but let's just go on the thing that it did, and because this part of the story doesn't matter either way. You go on the internet and you can find the reaction program of NORAD to hijacked planes. You are highly professional hijackers and you want to hit the Pentagon, and you are taking off from Washington Dulles, and you want to hit the Pentagon also in Washington, and you know of the reaction to hijackings by NORAD. So what you do is, amazingly professional hijackers, is you fly the sodding plane 45 minutes out into the Midwest, you then hijack it and fly it all the sodding way back. Are you kidding? And this is while the towers are being hit, it managed to be hijacked here and come all the way bloody back. And Rumsfeld said the first thing he knew about it was when he felt a jarring thing. So the bloody Pentagon being hit. The guy's the defense secretary. Oh, I forgot to mention that, Mr. Secretary. Insane. I'll get to them in a minute. So it smacked into the Pentagon at the absolute opposite end of that massive building to where Rumsfeld was. Now what should have happened, like I say, is that there should have been some reaction. Now they should have put planes up and sorted it out. Now they say, belatedly, that they scrambled planes from Cape Cod to the New York attacks. Didn't quite get there in time. And then they said they scrambled planes, belatedly, as I'll mention in a second, to meet Flight 77 when they eventually realized there was a hijacked plane 45 minutes out from Washington heading back towards Washington. Don't tell the Defense Secretary, though. Now, they say they scrambled planes to meet this threat to Washington from an airport at Langley, Virginia, 130 miles away. 130 miles away, they're the nearest planes to defend the no-fly zone over Washington. Why have one? But 10 miles down the road from the Pentagon is Andrews Air Force Base, where they keep Air Force One, Scare Force One as it became known after 9/11, the president's plane. It's where dignitaries coming in and out all the time. It's where they defend Washington from. Of course they do. They don't defend Washington from Langley, Virginia. The Air National Guard is based there. They call themselves the Capitol's Guardians. They've now kind of updated it. They call themselves the Capitol's Guardians, brackets, except on September the 11th. This is what they say on their own website. The DC Air National Guard is located at Andrews Air Force Base, Camp Springs, Maryland. We're home to the fighter squadron, including F-15 Flying Falcons, the type they send up to check planes, among others. The DC Air National Guard stand ready to respond to the needs of the District of Columbia and the nation should the need arise, except on September the 11th. Its website, which detailed a lot of stuff that goes on there, went down on September the 11th and didn't come back for some considerable time. Now, this is another thing. You know, it's the official story now that they scrambled jets and didn't quite make it. Well, that wasn't the official story for a week. The official story was, from all sources, that they never scrambled anything until the Pentagon was hit. So nothing was scrambled to meet Flight 77 that was 45 minutes hijacked coming back to Washington. This is how it worked. On September the 13th, General Richard Myers, we'll get to this bugger in a minute, was asked on Capitol Hill, when was the order made to scramble jets to meet these hijacks? He said, that order, to the best of my knowledge, didn't he ask? He's the head of the bloody military at uniform level, this guy. Oh, no one mentioned it. That order, to the best of my knowledge, was after the Pentagon was struck. This was so ludicrous that the story couldn't stick. What do you mean nothing was done till the Pentagon was hit? So, September 14th, Dan Rather on CBS, without saying the source, said CBS has learned that actually jets were scrambled from Cape Cod and from Langley, Virginia, but didn't quite make it. That then was still not the official story. On September the 15th, 4 days later, NORAD in the Boston Globe was still denying scrambling any jets before the Pentagon was hit. Then, September the 19th, miraculously, out of the ether, 8 days after the event, NORAD issued a press release confirming that Rather's story that the jets were scrambled was true. They did actually do it. It took them a week to know if they scrambled jets on that morning of all mornings. The official story is being put together in fits and starts, and now it has kind of hardened into the classic official 9/11 story. This is flipping funny. This is funny if it wasn't so tragic. These are the top 3 people in the American military hierarchy. The Commander-in-Chief, George Bush, the Defense Secretary, Rumsfeld, and General Richard Myers, who was acting chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on 9/11, the top uniformed military man in the American military, and now he's the fully fledged one. What were these people doing in this crucial time? Well, I was sitting in a bar, as I am many times, watching a television of CNN just after 9/11, and they were covering live a what they call in America a town meeting, a public meeting we would call it, of George Bush talking to an unbelievably sycophantic audience in Florida. And this little boy called Jordan asked him, it was live, said to him, Mr. President, say how we're all proud of you, and there's big applause. Well, let's see what we're proud of, shall we? Just hold on a second. And he said, can you tell me what you were thinking when you were told about 9/11? What happened? He said, well, Jordan, he said, I knew that I had to act. Well, that's the last thing he flipping did for a start. But wait a minute for this. He said, I was visiting a school at the time, he said, this is in Florida, on 9/11. He said, and I was watching this, television was on, they had a television there, where well, you would have if you were watching it, George. And he said, I saw this plane hit the World Trade Center. He said, and I thought, what a terrible pilot. I'm not kidding, I've got the tape. Got the tape now. I thought it was just an accident. Well, hold on a second. Georgie boy. He was in the school classroom when the second plane hit, and the second plane was the one shown live on television. The first plane was not shown live hitting anything on television. It was recorded by a crew in the street and shown a long time later. And here's the President of the United States telling the people that he stood there and saw the first plane hit live. Impossible. Also, this is very clear, he knew that there was a problem with Flight 11, the first plane, before he got to the school. It was referred to when he first arrived. Do you know there are 7 at least official stories of how he knew, how he found out. But let's go on that. You're the President of the United States. You've just been told, by whatever means, certainly not the one you say, that a commercial airliner has hit one of the Twin Towers. There is already carnage, unbelievable. Whatever is a terrible pilot, what does this man do? How does he react? What he does is he goes into a classroom and he listens to children reading him a story about a pet frickin' goat. That's what he does. Pet goat story, I love it, yeah. Symbolism. Then, this picture went across the world. Andrew Card, the White House Chief of Staff, walks in while he's hearing about the pet goat and says something to him. Now, what George Bush said in this town meeting is, my Chief of Staff, Andy Card, he came in and he said, Mr. President, America's under attack. Well, first of all, he couldn't have said that because when you watch the amount of time he was in that position, it was so short he couldn't have got that sentence out. Whatever he said, I don't know, but it wasn't that. Anyway, what does he do now? He's just been told that a second commercial airliner has hit the World Trade Center and America's under attack. What does he do? He stays in the classroom for another 20 minutes, nearly, hearing children read him a story about a pet frickin' goat. This man's a hero in America. So now we know what was really said in this famous piece of footage. Mr. President, America's under attack. Okay, Andy, as soon as I know what's happened to this goat, I'll be right out. (9:30), 25 minutes plus after the second plane hit, he makes a statement and off he goes. Don't rush, Georgie. Take your time, mate. And he goes into a mode of flying around America, doing basically nothing. I met a guy who was involved in the computer defense system of Australia, and he told me that the Australian military were on high alert after 9/11 before the American military were put there by this guy. Then, do you remember the story? When I say they lie all the time, what I really mean is they lie all the time. Do you remember that story about the terrorist threat to Air Force One? And that's why the president went flyabout instead of heading back for Washington. And apparently it said the president's plane is next. Well, little question, you know, a bit naive of me maybe, but worth asking. Why did they drive him straight to the plane and take the bloody thing off then? Why did they do that? With no, for a long time, fighter escort. About 2 weeks after that story was given to the media, that's why he went walkabout, they had to admit, and it was printed in some newspapers, they told a lie. There was no threat, there was no phone call, just a lie. And then there's Rumsfeld. Now, he was interviewed on Larry King Live about what he was doing during 9/11. And what he said was that he was hosting a presidential delegation or a congressional delegation in his office at the Pentagon, far side from where the plane hit, right down the corridor from the command center that's supposed to orchestrate hijacked reactions. He said that during this breakfast meeting, which started around 8 o'clock, just as Flight 11, the first plane, was taking off, he said that someone came in and handed him a note saying the World Trade Center's been hit. He then said, this is words, I've got the tape, he walked out of the meeting to get a briefing, and he said, within 15 minutes, I felt a jarring thing, which was the Pentagon being hit by Flight 77. Now, we can put a timeline on this. The Pentagon was hit at 20 to 10. Go back 15 minutes when he said he got the note, you're at 25 past 9. Give him 5 minutes benefit, you're at 20 past 9. This is his own words. He is saying, and the regulations say, you can see them on the internet, that as soon as a hijacking is known to be in operation, the Defense Secretary has to be notified immediately. He is saying that around 20 past 9, down the corridor from the command center that's supposed to orchestrate hijack reaction, he is given a note in his office telling him that the Twin Towers have been hit by the first plane, and the first plane hit at 9:45, 35 minutes before, and they didn't bother to mention the little nicety that a second one had hit at 3 minutes past 9. What? It's ludicrous. But because people don't take that and then look at that and look at that and look at that, they just get an image. These guys get away with this. And then there's him, General Myers. He was interviewed on military radio and television in America. Again, I've got the transcript. And he said that morning he was on Capitol Hill due to have a meeting with a guy called Senator Max Cleland, at a kind of scheduled meeting. And he said just before he went into the meeting, he saw on the television that the Twin Towers had been hit. Now this guy's the uniformed head of the military at the Pentagon. He's saying the Pentagon didn't tell him about it, he saw it on the telly, and they didn't tell him about it all the way afterwards, because his reaction, having seen that, what could it be? Military terrorist attack? What? Hey, get on the Pentagon, what's going on? No, he does nothing. He goes into a scheduled meeting with Senator Max Cleland. And then he says he came out of it, and immediately came out of it, he said, someone said, hey, another plane's hit the Twin Towers, and then immediately he said, someone said the Pentagon's been hit. We can put a timeline on this. The Pentagon was hit at 20 to 10. About the time he came out of the meeting, he must have gone into the meeting before 3 minutes past 9 when the second plane was hit, because he didn't know about that. He is saying that the uniformed head of the military at the Pentagon went into a scheduled meeting where everyone knew where he was, and no one notified him in all that time of what was going on. Insane. Why? Now, another thing is that this guy who is involved with the computer security defense system of Australia, he actually took me and he showed me around the Canberra Parliament building where they have ground-to-air missiles, a computerized system that any plane that goes into the airspace threatening and around the Parliament building in Canberra is immediately contacted, not by a human but by a computer, demanding they punch in a code that allows them to enter that airspace. If they don't punch it in a very short time, and those ground-to-air missiles are activated by a computer to blow the plane out the sky. That's what happens in Australia, in Canberra. Pentagon, nothing. This plane can come round and hit nothing. Insane. Of course it is defended. So why not that date? They've admitted that's defended. They don't defend the Pentagon. Ludicrous. Why? All this is going on because of this. No one has to direct an assassination. It happens. The active role is played secretly by permitting it to happen. This is the greatest single clue. Who has the power to call off and reduce the usual security precautions? The very people who are now waging the war on terrorism on the back of 9/11 are the very people that had the power to do that. And I suggest they took it big time. I've got to whip through this because I want to get a lot in. Now, that is the plane, the type of plane that these hijackers were supposed to have learned to fly in. That's the kind of plane that was hijacked. Anyone see the difference there? This is how Flight 77 was described. The hijacker pilots were then forced to execute a difficult high-speed descending turn. Radar shows that Flight 77 did a downward spiral, turning almost a complete circle and dropping the last 7,000 feet in 2.5 minutes. The steep turn was so smooth, the sources say, it is clear there was no fight for control going on, and the complex maneuver suggests the hijackers had better flying skills than many investigators first believed. It talks about the way that it turned and hit the Pentagon at 460 miles an hour. Okay. This is what the ace pilot's instructors said, who's supposed to have been in that cockpit. It was like Dumb and Dumber. I mean, they were clueless. It was clear to me they weren't going to make it as pilots. Rick Garza, flight instructor, Zorby's flying school. So for sure, hijacker pilots, trained or not trained, it turns out, at puddle jumping schools in Florida and elsewhere, were not capable of flying those sort of planes the way they did. But interestingly, there has been developed for some considerable time, this is this plane called the Global Hawk, technology that does not need pilots. I watched that Jeremy Clarkson guy on, I think it was BBC, doing a thing on speed or something, and I turned the television on while I was researching this book, very synchronistic, and he's in the cockpit of a 747 taking off from New York. And the story is about how little the pilot input has to be. Just flying from America to Britain. They take off, they get off the ground, and then the computer takes over. And in this program, it flew across the Atlantic to Heathrow. It brought the plane in, pilot not involved. It landed the front wheel on the middle of the runway, and then applied the bloody brakes. And then the pilot taxied it to the gate. In other words, if you can get access to the flight management system of the computer from the ground, you can make that plane do somersaults if you like. You don't need people from puddle jumping schools to fly it. Now this Global Hawk technology has flown without a pilot at all on board from the west coast of America to Australia. It's flown to Europe, all done by computer. And it's been around a long time. It's got the wingspan of a 737. What's been around a long time is this technology. Now, I don't know if you've ever come across this called Operation Northwoods. In the summer of 2001, in the run-up to 9/11, a guy who was a former ABC producer produced a book about one of the intelligence community networks in America. In it, he came across this Operation Northwoods in official documents that people thought were no longer existed. Operation Northwoods was staggering in the light of what followed. These documents detail how 40 years ago, in the early 60s, during the Kennedy administration, the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon, the people that run the military, had developed this plan called Operation Northwoods to put terrorist bombs in American cities like New York and Miami and other places, hijack planes, shoot down planes, American planes, and attack boats, to be blamed on the Cubans to justify an invasion of Cuba. And part of this Operation Northwoods, and in Alice in Wonderland I detail a lot of this stuff from these documents, And part of it was to replace a commercial airliner with a remotely controlled from the ground plane, take off the original airliner with passengers, land it at an Air Force base, replace it with the remotely controlled plane painted in the same livery, same colors, fly it across Cuba. They were looking for a route that naturally went across Cuba, and they were going to destroy the plane by remote control over Cuba and then blame it on a missile from Cuba to justify an invasion of Cuba. James Bamford did it. An aircraft, Elgin Air Force Base, will be painted and numbered, this is from his book, as an exact duplicate for the civil registered aircraft belonging to a CIA proprietary organization in the Miami area. At a designated time, the duplicate would be substituted for the actual civil aircraft and would be loaded with selected passengers, all boarded under carefully prepared aliases. The actual registered aircraft would be converted into a drone, remotely controlled. Takeoff times of the drone aircraft and the actual aircraft will be scheduled to allow a rendezvous south of Florida where they were going to replace one with the other. That is what they were planning to do and were capable of doing 40 years ago. Imagine the technology available now to control aircraft from the ground. And who has been working with this remotely controlled technology? NORAD. Black boxes, 8 black boxes, 4 data information boxes, and 4 cockpit recorder black boxes, the contents of which have never been revealed from 4 planes in that event. Why? Because if something will support the official story, we see or hear it. If it would demolish it, we don't see or hear it. Simple as that. The hijackers, oh yes. Isn't it funny? 19 hijackers, yes, named by the FBI within no time afterwards when they had no idea it was going to happen. Not actually what their agents say, but that's what they claim. Well, how come 7 of them are still alive? What did they do, parachute? How do they manage that? How come 7 of these guys has been identified as being alive, including one who's flying for Moroccan Airlines today? Well, I guess if a passport can survive, they can parachute, I guess. What's supposed to have happened was Mohammed Attar was supposed to have been the leader of this, and what he did was on the night before this long-planned hijack of Flight 11, he wasn't in Boston that night, ready that he wasn't going to have anything go wrong. For some reason, strange man, he drives all the way to Portland, Maine, which means to get to Flight 11, which he'd long planned to hijack, he had to get a commuter jet in that morning from Portland, Maine to Boston, and if that was delayed in any bloody way, he was going to miss Flight 11. Now that's good planning, isn't it? But it gets better. This is the official FBI timeline of Attar that morning. His plane left Portland, Maine at 6 o'clock in the morning, the last plane he could get to Flight 11. According to the FBI, he checked out of his hotel in Portland, Maine at 27 minutes to take off. What did he do? Oversleep? I mean, did the alarm not go off? I mean, what's going on here? In that 27 minutes, he has to take his hire car back. He has to get from there to the check-in. He has to check in, put the baggage in, and he has to get through security. In 27 minutes. I bet there was a hell of a frickin' shout when he woke up and saw the time. Abdul! Get up! Bloody knickers and shirts everywhere, I bet. Ludicrous! Oh, and then we've got, a lot of people think, again, image, when I say, well, there's no, I'm not saying he wasn't, by the way, but there is actually no evidence that he got on the plane. I actually said to the airlines, can you confirm, simple question, can you confirm that the hijackers named by the FBI passed through your normal check-in procedures? Their reply, we can't answer that, you'll have to ask the FBI. What? Simple question, yes or no? So, but people think that, oh yes, there was evidence, that's all. There was surveillance cameras have been getting on the plane. No. Name me one international airport in the whole of this world, especially today, that doesn't have cameras in its departure lounge. Boston Logan. Anyway, the pictures of Attar were him coming through security at Portland, Maine. And if you look, this is how they framed it in the media, basically. And the timeline is 5:45, quarter of an hour to the plane taking off. That means he has left the hotel at 5:33, driven to the airport, parked the car, gone across to the airport, checked in, and got here in between 5:33 and 5:45. Maybe he's a shapeshifter. Maybe he is, I don't know. Now, that is the last place you would put the timing of a security video. You want to see the people. This is where you'd put it. Oh, hey, what does this one say? 5:53:41, 6 minutes to the plane taking off, bit more like it, which is why the check-in people were quoted as saying, who checked him in at Portland, Maine, he was sweating blood. He said he was running late. And I went back to the security people, the lovely lady at Portland, Maine, and I said, can you explain to me why there are 2 time codes on that video footage and one is slap bang in the middle of the screen? She said, no, I can't. I said, well, could you have a look at it and let me know? Or can't? She said, the FBI confiscated that on September the 11th. Control events. Control the official story. As I say, I'm not saying he wasn't on, what I'm saying is there's no evidence to say he was. And then there's this guy, Alan Morey. Whoa, he's looking like he's going to die the next day, isn't he? This was taken at Portland, Maine. He was supposed to be with Attar that morning. And here he is, Alamori, Abdulaziz Alamori, one of the hijackers, except that, as was established later, that's not Alamori. That's Alamori. He's a pilot with Saudi Airlines who walked into the consulate in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia on the morning of September the 11th and said, why am I being named as a hijacker? I'm having breakfast with me family when it was all going on. And then you've got Lotfi Racy, 5 months in jail because the FBI said he trained hijackers. Had to be let go after 5 months because there was no evidence, and they said he was an Islamic extremist when he was married to a white Roman Catholic. What I'm saying here is these are the people that have told us the official story. And how the hell many of these people in Guantanamo Bay are not guilty of anything? It's nearly 700 of them been there now, well over a year in those conditions. No trial, no lawyer, no charge. These are the guys you wouldn't buy a bloody new Mercedes off these people. They have the ones that have orchestrated the official story of 9/11. And also, the way the towers fell were very, very suspicious. And one story I read recently is these towers were actually lined with explosives anyway, as a matter of course, as a safety device. In case one of them was toppling over, they would bring it down because of the devastation that it would cause if it fell the full length across New York. But we can find out what caused those towers to collapse in the same way that we could find out what caused the Murrah building to collapse. You get independent experts into the rubble and you do the research. You look at the metal and you research it and you find out what was the cause of the collapse. Controlled demolition group were employed by the government to take it away, so it's not possible. Just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. So then you have the reaction. And the reaction, of course, is connected to all this. There's your secret agenda. You want to introduce a war on terrorism. You need the excuse. So you play the movie here and you give your reaction or your story of what happened to glean the reaction that you want from the public. Do something. We must be protected. I like this. Will you lie first or shall I? So these two immediately come together as they have been since 9/11. and you work the emotions of the people. You make it polarized. Either you're with us or you're against us, or you're intelligent in that case, and you polarize everything. You don't show pictures of Arab people who are tremendously sad at what happened. You just keep focusing on the images you want people to glean to take on the official version of events. Abraham Lincoln said, "Public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. He who molds opinion is greater than he who enacts the laws." He might have added, once you mold opinion, you can exact any laws that you want. Now, what we're seeing is a very old technique. This is what a major Nazi said in the last century. Why, of course, the people don't want war. Why should some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war when the best he can get out of it is to come back to his farm in one piece? Naturally, the common people don't want war, neither in Russia, nor in England, nor for that matter in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it is a democracy or a fascist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the peacemakers for their lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. Hermann Göring. Exactly what has happened since 9/11 and continues to happen, because the same mentality is running this show on a global level that was running it during the Second World War. This is Tony Blair showing the evidence that bin Laden did it. Orchestrated it from a cave in Afghanistan. This is him showing the file against bin Laden and the dossier to the military. There it is, look. And this is the Americans looking at the evidence against bin Laden. So we're all right. We've sorted it out. There's a reason why they wanted to bring Afghanistan in it. There's Bumsfeld, I call him. Lies, 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 lies. I'm sorry, that's all I can say. All my other lies are classified. This is what Bush said about bin Laden. They are harboring a terrorist and they need to hand him over. There's no need to discuss innocence or guilt. We know he's guilty. This is the justice of the new, brave new world. And remember the confession video? Bin Laden? Well, if that bin Laden they said was earlier is the same bin Laden on the video, then all I can say, he's had a number of calls from the Kandahar Cream Cake Company. He must have done. And the Kandahar Nose Job Company, Cave Visits a Speciality. We have an alleged confession video in which in the whole conversation, nothing is mentioned about the fact Afghanistan is being bombed by America and Britain, even though it's so far advanced that Kabul is only a few days from being taken. And then this is what Greg Strauss, the visual effects supervisor who worked on Titanic, the movie Titanic, said. That's how we make our money, kind of faking things to convince everyone it's real. We just did some Nike commercials where half the people are digital. You wouldn't be able to pick them out. This is the world we now live in terms of visual technology and possibility. It really is the time not to believe what we think our eyes see without checking it out and questioning it. And then I love this line in the video. We did not reveal the operation to them until just before they boarded the planes. Ready to have a conversation in the departure lounge or what? Hey, quick, Abdul, quick, listen. You know those big towers in New York? Well, listen. And did you notice? I love it. The Korans were left everywhere. You notice? They were left in strip joints. Oh, sorry, there's a bit of a contradiction here. They were left in hotel rooms. I mean, there's had boxes of them, these people. I mean, what were they? The Islamic version of the bloody Gideons? I mean, who were these people? Image. Oh, they found a Quran. See, it's them then. What time's Wheel of Fortune on, honey? But keep focusing on this image. Image, image. Wind up the emotions of the people. Focus on one man, but only for as long as it matters, and then forget he exists. Talk about freedom while taking it away, and you can create a situation in which you are a hero for killing 5,000 civilians, at least, independent count, in Afghanistan in response to 3,000 civilians dying in the attacks in America. That is the focus that started this whole period. That is, previous shot was terrorism. This is fighting terrorism. This is evil. This is fighting for peace and justice. They are both freaking terrorism, and it's about time we realized it. These guys are wanted for terrorism. I was interviewed on this liquid news thing on BBC. It was live. I agreed to do it because it was live. And they threw me a great line because George Michael had just come out with this video about Bush, and it was all this controversy, and they said, you know, what do you think about that? I thought, ooh, hey, set me up brilliant. I said, my only problem with it, I don't think he went far enough. What he should have said was they're both flipping terrorists. And her eyes went, woo, and her ear started, woo. Lovely. And then I was talking about, no, it was just created to create the war on terrorism. That's just your opinion. I said, well, hold on a minute. That's fine. It's fine you saying that. But why don't your news say that when you quote George Bush or Tony Blair as saying something as fact? Why don't they just say, hey, he's saying this is the official story of 9/11, but it's only his opinion. No, we don't have that. Becomes the official story. Definition of a terrorist: one who favors or uses terror-inspiring methods of governing or coercing government or community, hence terrorism. I wonder if blowing the feet off a 16-year-old ice cream vendor in Afghanistan might just constitute that version of what a terrorist is. This is what really happens when we go to war. And you know, you hear these people, we've got to go to war. We've got to go to war? You're watching the Saudi war on CNN, mate. You're going nowhere. We send other people in to do that. You know, there's going to be a few, hey, if you want to look away pictures coming up, because I'll tell you why, not least because this video is going to go out in America. If we think that our news is controlled and slanted, and it is, whoa, in America, they're the business, like Fix News, Fix News, not Fox News, Fix News of Murdoch, and all these other networks. They're doing everything but have their presenters sitting at desks enveloped in the national bloody flag. And unless we realize what war really means, how can we make an informed decision on whether we think we should go to war? I have a simple philosophy. I don't want to go to war ever, because once you go to war, you've lost already. This was Afghanistan before the bloody bomb started. A Stone Age country in the middle of a famine. Hey, John, go get 'em, boy. And they dropped these cluster bombs, which rip people apart, because once they explode, this razor-sharp metallic objects fly out at great speeds, cut people in half, and they dropped bloody food parcels that look like cluster bombs. What a great laugh those people must have had. Hey, he thought it was his food, he's got blown up, hey. And I'm not kidding you, this is the mentality of these people. They took, before Afghanistan the bombing started, they got control of all satellite images, private and public, of Afghanistan, so that they could hide the fact that they were targeting civilian targets. And here's a funny thing. Osama bin Laden, created by the CIA, wanted by the FBI, strange but true. The CIA created this guy, brought him out of Saudi Arabia to front up al-Qaeda during the occupation of Afghanistan by the Soviets. The tunnel system they had to bomb, the Al-Qaeda tunnel system, was actually built with CIA money funneled through the ISI, Pakistan Military Intelligence, from the CIA. And it was built by bin Laden Construction. That's it, Lodion. I like that. You're the head of the snake. No, you're the head of the snake. You're both right. Yeah, absolutely you are. Oh, do you remember the anthrax scare? Image, fear. Protect me. Take my rights away. Protect me. I saw this headline. Cheney says anthrax packages are very worrying. So I wrote at the bottom, we'll stop sending them then, Dick. And of course, the anthrax scare disappeared in bloody minutes once it was established that the strain of anthrax going through the post was the one used and only used by the US military. Ooh. And the anthrax vaccine, which of course sold in vast amounts, is actually owned by a company. The only company producing it is Bioport, and that links into the Carlyle Group of Father George Bush. Now, oil stupid. Let's quickly go through this. Why did they pick Afghanistan? Well, for many reasons, not least logistical, but in terms of oil, for this reason. There is a frenzy among the Illuminati families and companies to control the vast gas and oil reserves of the Caspian Sea. Now, because the Caspian Sea is a landlocked sea, they need pipelines across all these countries, hey, just the ones they're taking over, to get it out to the world markets. And what they wanted was a pipeline across western Afghanistan down through to the Pakistan coast of the Arabian Sea. They had no problem with the Taliban and its treatment of women or bin Laden when during the 90s Unocal, a major oil company in America, was negotiating with the Taliban to build those pipelines. They took the Taliban to Texas, gave them the star treatment. They were then flown to the State Department, and the same happened. And they were doing a deal. But because of the Taliban's treatment of women, a tremendous backlash, not least in America, from women's groups and others, forced Unocal to eventually accept that they could not build the pipeline while the Taliban were in power. In the words of a Unocal spokesman in 1997, we cannot go ahead with a pipeline until there is an internationally recognized regime in Afghanistan. These are the people, by the way, that some of the companies involved in this frenzy to control the oil of the Caspian Sea. Unocal I've mentioned. Halliburton, Chief Executive Officer, 1995 to 2000, still on the payroll, Dick Cheney. Pennzoil, Bush family. Chevron, on the board of that before she joined the Bush administration, Condoleezza Rice, they even named a oil tanker after her, the National Security Advisor. So, Unocal wanted to build this pipeline, couldn't go ahead, they had to pull out in 97. What happened then is the Taliban were removed by blaming it on bin Laden and saying bin Laden is kept by the Taliban in Afghanistan, and now that pipeline is being built. Just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. And the company involved with Unocal was a joint venture, Delta Namir, companies held by Khalid bin Mahfouz and Mohammed Al-Amoudi, the two people who were named by the Clinton State Department as funders of Al-Qaeda. Hey, the puzzle pieces are starting to go together here. So that's why they went for Afghanistan, at least on the level of oil. Now it doesn't end there. Oh. A guy called Zalmay Khalilzad was appointed by George Bush as his envoy to Afghanistan after the war to oversee the transition into the new government of Afghanistan, which was headed by Hamid Karzai, as it still is today. Ooh. Zalmay Khalilzad, chief advisor to Unocal on the pipeline project. Hamid Karzai, advisor to Unocal on the pipeline project. Hey, this is the movie. How many journalists out there are there? Millions and millions. Why do we know this? This guy was Defense Secretary Cheney when his military bombed the oil infrastructure of Iraq in the 1991 Gulf War. As chief executive of Halliburton, he won contracts from Saddam Hussein to repair some of what had been bombed. Couldn't make the sodding thing up. Here's the new Middle East. There we go. Prior planning. One of the things you find with problem reaction solution every time, and it's obvious you're going to find it if it's a problem reaction solution, is that the solution is already in place before the problem is created. This is, funnily enough, I just put this up because this was an advert for fridges by General Electric about a year before 9/11, which was kind of prophetic. But anyway, there was a guy called Niyaz Naik. He was a former Pakistan foreign minister who said that immediately after 9/11 that he'd attended a meeting in Berlin in the summer of 2001, just in a few months before 9/11, at which American officials had told him they intended to invade Afghanistan before the snows came in mid-October to remove the Taliban and get bin Laden. And he said a number of things about how they intended to do it and all the rest of it. Virtually everything Niyaz Naik says he was told in the summer of 2001 and said immediately after 9/11, before there's any mention of invading Afghanistan, he'd been told. Virtually everything unfolded in the months that followed. He was told, for instance, that this guy was going to be involved in the new government. Zahir Shah, the exiled king of Afghanistan, exiled in Rome. As a result of Karzai becoming leader, who was his representative, he's now ensconced back in the presidential palace in Kabul, exactly as Niyaz Naik was told. Interestingly, the British forces that took part in the invasion of Afghanistan did not leave Britain after September the 11th. They left on September the 3rd. The biggest military force, naval force, to leave these shores since the Falklands War left Portsmouth on September the 3rd. So by the time those planes hit those buildings, they were closing in on Oman, their destination, for exercises, exactly the place they needed to be to join in the invasion of Afghanistan, which was planned long before. So you have Karzai put into place. He comes into the presidential palace, and this is how it's possible to do it, by having this pyramid structure. You have over here, I've said Islamic terrorist network created the hijackers. That's just the official story, but I'm just saying, let's just talk about the way that could happen. Over there you have Illuminati networks that are involved in these terrorist groups. Over here you have Illuminati networks, pyramids, that control the United States government, the British government, and the FBI, CIA. But eventually there's a pyramid that encompasses both. And at that level of the pyramid, that level of the network, they can control both sides. They can control what happens and the non-response to what happens. It's the pyramid structure. Now, the vast majority of people, even in a terrorist network, will only get their orders from here. They won't know what's there and what's there. They only know what's here. And lots of these people involved in these terrorist networks have no idea who the real orchestrator of their terrorism is. And this is how they do it. One force manipulating both sides, creating the movie that creates the mind control of the people. So the solution, what has happened? More and more of our basic freedoms have been taken away. More and more getting the public in America to spy on the public because of terrorism. It's a real hassle to speak out and say what you want. Homeland security, newspeak. Anywhere, anytime I see politicians mention the word security, what they're really saying is control. So now we have homeland security. Now, how about this for a quote? This is Adolf Hitler announcing why the Gestapo has to be formed. An evil exists that threatens every man, woman, and child of this great nation. We must take steps to ensure our domestic security and protect our homeland. Could have come from George Bush, could have come from Tony Blair. because we're seeing the same mentality in charge. You know, in America now, this is an FBI leaflet to people. They're actually talking about terrorists being people who want to, preserve the Constitution against the federal government. People who want to police the police. In other words, stop the police doing whatever they like. They're supposed to be terrorists according to that definition now. Okay. And here we are in the present day with the Illuminati going back to Babylon, or back to Iraq, as they would prefer to say. And again, behind it, in the shadows, are people like this guy. Saddam, Saddam, Saddam. Behind the little boy is put in front just to speak the words written for him. And it's interesting, when you look at George Bush, the father, and those he has invaded, like Noriega in Panama, people like bin Laden, the connections between that which is invaded and the people that are the targets and the Bush family are there again. This fella was a member of the Safari Club, might still be, I don't know. The Safari Club was an elite secret society in the Middle East, working in the Illuminati web, that was fundamentally connected to another secret society in France called Les Cercles, or the Pinay Circle. And it involves intelligence agency representatives from the Western countries, and it interlocks with the Safari Club, which is the people of the Middle East in intelligence or what have you. Again, the web, where they're connected rather than, as the public think, apart. And he and Bush also had deals going for oil kickbacks in Iraq and other places. But everyone's expendable once it comes to the agenda and what's best for it. He invaded Father George Bush, Iraq in '91. And he was at the point where all he had to do to remove Saddam Hussein was to raise the money for the petrol to drive to Baghdad. Such disarray was the country in. But at that point, he calls the troops out, leaving the monster in there to be played another day. But they said, even though we've done that, he's still a monster and he's still there, and so we've got to have sanctions. So they introduce, Britain and America, sanctions. And the bombing continued. People think that the bombing stopped with the 1991 Gulf War and started again in 2003. They have been bombing in the no-fly zone of Iraq ever since. This is 1999. A little child pulled out of the rubble after an American bombing, and her sister was also killed in this bombing. Again and again, civilians have been picked off in the no-fly zone by these crazed people in planes playing computer games ever since. But the sanctions were absolutely fantastic. Some look-away pictures now. What actually happened in the 1991 Gulf War is they dropped so many bombs with depleted uranium that the leukemia figures in Iraq absolutely soared in the years since. In the last conflict in 2003, they dropped enormously more depleted uranium bombs than they did in '91. God knows what the future is going to be in that state. But there are also babies, more and more being born in Iraq with horrendous deformities because of the depleted uranium in the bombs that these crackpots are dropping. And here's just some of them. How many more are going to be born as a result of the bombardment of depleted uranium in the last few months? During the period of the sanctions, which of course immediately they take Iraq over, we want the sanctions dropped now, all right, get the oil out. By 1995, more than 1 million Iraqis have died, 567,000 of them children, as a direct consequence of economic sanctions. As many as 12% of the children surveyed in Baghdad are wasted, 28% stunted, and 29% underweight. The UN, December 1995. Are you watching, America? Go on, John, go get them. More than 4,500 children under the age of 5 are dying each month from hunger and disease. UNICEF, October 1996, as a result of the sanctions. CBS 60 Minutes program. Leslie Saul, the interviewer, talking to Madeleine Albright, the then Secretary of State. We have heard that 500,000 children have died as a result of sanctions against Iraq. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, what is the price worth it? Madeleine Albright, I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it. Well, what did it achieve? They announced in the end, officially, it achieved bugger all because they have to go and bomb them again. God bless America, land that I love. Let's blow the frigging world into the sky above. Go on, John, go get him. John Wayne, hey, good guy. No need for prophecy, Nostradamus, for what has unfolded in the last few months and is planned to unfold in the months to come unless we wake up. In the late 90s, an organization was formed in America called the Project for the New American Century. It was produced, and they produced a report in September 2000 that was a blueprint for the Bush administration that was planned to be scammed into power in the months that followed. These are the people who were behind the Project for the New American Century and this blueprint report. Dick Cheney, who then became vice president, more likely president. Donald Rumsfeld, defense secretary. Paul Wolfowitz, deputy defense secretary with more power than him in truth. You usually find the real powers with the deputy, not quite as up front as the others. Also behind the Project for the New American Century and its connecting organization, the American Enterprise Institute, Michael Ledeen, infamously involved in far-right organizations in Italy at the time of the notorious P2 Freemasonry Lodge, when its head, the Mussolini fascist Licio Gelli, was exposed and eventually jailed for controlling the society of Italy, its government, its business, its banking, including the Vatican Bank, through the P2 Freemasonry Lodge that connected into Henry Kissinger, another associate of Michael Ledeen. Richard Pearl, he's on the Defense Policy Board of the Pentagon, who advises the Pentagon on policy. What do you advise, Richard? I advise to invade Iraq. Oh. American Enterprise Institute, known as the godfather of the neocons, the neoconservatives. I think I have another phrase for them. Woolsey, who is the head of, or was the head of the CIA in the 90s. He's on the Defense Policy Board with him, deciding Pentagon policy. He's a big mate of Shalabi, the guy that they want to be involved in the new government of Iraq. Douglas Feith, who is actually in a major policy-making position in the Pentagon and decides who goes on the Pentagon Policy Board. Jeb Bush, the brother of George Bush, governor for Florida at the time of the scammed Florida vote, and William Crystal, chairman of the New American Century, or the Project for the New American Century organization that produced this report, and he is a pundit who goes on to fix news in America to project and promote this policy. So what did this report say? September 2000. The United States has for decades sought to play a more permanent role in Gulf regional security. While the unresolved conflict with Iraq provides the immediate justification, the need for a substantial American force presence in the Gulf transcends the issue of the regime of Saddam Hussein. So the immediate justification to go into the Middle East and start this going is Saddam Hussein and Iraq. This is before they even came to power. It calls for a blueprint for maintaining global U.S. preeminence and shaping the international security order in line with America's principles and interests. In other words, the Illuminati, who were using America as the vehicle. This American grand strategy, it said, must be advanced as far into the future as possible, and the U.S. must fight and decisively win multiple simultaneous major theater wars as a core mission. That's what they're planning to do. In September 2000, it calls the American Armed Forces the cavalry on the new American frontier. And it says that key allies like the United Kingdom are the most effective and efficient means of exercising American global leadership. Exactly what they've done since they came to power. Used Britain and Blair to do that. It says that peacekeeping missions demand American political leadership rather than that of the United Nations. Precisely what they've done. And hey, we got the axis of evil. It highlights North Korea, Syria, Iran, and Libya as dangerous regimes and says their existence justifies the creation of a worldwide command and control system, World Army. The very nations that have been mentioned since. The axis of evil speech and that phrase was written for Bush by David Froome of the American Enterprise Institute, same organization. It also says it spotlights China for regime change, says it's time for the presence of American forces in Southeast Asia. This could lead to American and Allied power providing the spur to the process of democratization in China. Can you imagine what that would mean? And what did Paul Wolfowitz announce this week? More troops going into Asia, American troops. We're actually seeing this unfold in front of our eyes. In The Biggest Secret, 1998, the plan is to engineer events, real and staged, that will create enormous fear in the countdown to 2012. This includes a plan to start a third world war, either by stimulating the Muslim world into a holy war against the West, or by using China to cause global conflict, maybe both. How did I know that? Because people on the inside of this told me that's what the game was. Many of them over the years of the 90s. What else does it say? Because what it says is what they're planning to do. It calls for the creation of US space forces to dominate space and total control of cyberspace to prevent their enemies, i.e. anyone that's challenging the agenda, using the internet. It talks, are we talking Nazis or fascism or what? It talks of developing biological weapons that can target specific genotypes. This may transform biological warfare from the realm of terror to a politically useful tool. What else did it say? It said that this project, this blueprint of conquest, would necessarily be slow to unfold unless America had a new Pearl Harbor. In its words, their process of transformation is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. This crowd who wrote that came to power. They're in the Pentagon and the government now. In January, officially, 2001. By September, what had happened? What George Bush called at the time, our Pearl Harbor. The force behind the war on terrorism was the force that created the justification for it. The Fourth Reich is not coming, it's fricking here. So, look at the countries around the Caspian Sea, which is only part of it. It's about conquest for other reasons. Iraq. Iran, are they talking about going next? Oh, we have 710 good reasons to be involved in the affairs of the Middle East. Excuse me, Mr. President. Oh, thank you. Oil. But these empires are not really America and Britain. Well, first of all, let me emphasize this. When I talk about America and Britain, I ain't talking about the British and the Americans. I mean, for God's sake, on the streets of this city, we had 1 million people against that war in one day. Hey, they ain't involved in this. I'm talking about the force controlling the American and the British governments. There are vast numbers of people in America who are totally sickened by what's happening, as much as we are in vast numbers here. And these countries are vehicles for this force. They're just being used as vehicles. They couldn't give a toss about America or Britain, really. Go walk about, Georgie. Read your speech. Now this is what's really happening. When that soldier put that that American flag on that statue of Saddam Hussein and told to get it down quick, they'll realize what's happening. That's what it's about, conquest. No, it's liberation of Iraqis. General Cluster and Captain Bluster, come together again, because we have the next conquest. There's the Blair Bush Summit. That's kind of put him down, George. So here we go. Missiles, tanks, troops, planes, bombs, ships, guns, a reason. Hey, what's that reason? Oh, we'll work it out. Don't worry. We'll have a discussion. Well, if they listen to this guy, the reason was not justified. This is Scott Ritter, the chief UN weapons inspector in Iraq for 5 years, quoted by John Pilger in the Guardian newspaper. By 1998, the chemical weapons infrastructure had been completely dismantled or destroyed by UNSCOM, the UN inspection team, or by Iraq in compliance with our mandate. The biological weapons program was gone, all major facilities eliminated, the nuclear weapons program was completely eliminated, the long-range ballistic missile program was completely eliminated. If I had to quantify Iraq's threat, it is zero. Chief weapons inspector in Iraq for 5 years for the UN. Oh, but we need to attack Iraq. Reason. Weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. Hey, I better talk quick because they could hit us in 45 minutes. Do you remember that one? So, hey, don't question it. Hey, weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. Mantra. Repeat. Believe. There we go. There's the connection between Iraq and Al-Qaeda. Clear link. There's the Blair again with the weapons of mass destruction's dossier, and there's the Americans looking at it. You know the deal. Actually, they did find some weapons of mass destruction. Here's one I made earlier. That can hit the west coast of America, mate. And they did find one of those mobile weapons laboratories. This is one, you know. It may look like a London bus to you. These are Iraqis. Ooh, can't trust them. But anyway, never mind if we believe it, we're going anyway. Now, people say, and it's true, hey, you can't say that they never had chemical weapons and weapons of mass destruction, mantra, because they did have them. He used them against the Kurds. Yes. Where did he get them from? This is a picture in 1983 of Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein. He was sent by the Reagan-Bush administration to organize the shipment of chemical weapons, including bubonic plague, to Saddam Hussein to be used against Iran in the Iraq-Iran war. These were the very chemical weapons that were used to gas the friggin' Kurds. Don't take my word for it. Classified State Department documents came to light in the last few months, which say Donald Rumsfeld, the U.S. Defense Secretary, is one of the reports on them, and one of the most strident critics of Saddam Hussein, met the Iraqi president in 1983 to ease the way for U.S. companies to sell biological and chemical weapons, including anthrax and bubonic plague cultures, according to newly classified U.S. government documents. Now, hold on a minute. In the year 2000, Donald Rumsfeld, Defense Secretary of the United States, was on the board of a company, a major giant engineering company in Europe called ABB. At the time he was on the board, they sold nuclear technology to, stands back in amazement, North Korea. This is the very technology that he now, as Defense Secretary, is saying justifies the fact that North Korea is a danger to the bloody world. Why? Because those who are orchestrating the secret agenda are also providing the movie with evidence. That's how it works. But follow the white rabbit, people. Keep chasing the white rabbit. Hey, it's weapons of mass destruction. Hey, I'm frightened. Hey, I must chase. I don't know how to spell bloody peace, but I must chase the white rabbit. Go, USA! Go and kill some more. I'm not coming, though. And so, on the basis, again, for the second time after Afghanistan, on the basis of no sodden evidence of justification, they bombed the crap out of another frickin' country. Yes, he does love it. a picture of Afghanistan and Baghdad, just one point of the bombing. But they're smart weapons. They go through a toilet window. Well, why did some of these smart weapons land in frickin' Turkey and Saudi Arabia? I mean, they don't have the map. And, I thought this guy was dead. I did. I'm sure I read it somewhere. John Wayne, I read, was not anywhere in this dimension any longer. So why, when I'm watching the Iraq War, is this guy everywhere? He's making statements to the media on behalf of the military. He's talking on the top of a tank. He's someone being interviewed in America about, we should go to war. John Wayne's every bloody where. Because that is the level, the way so many people in America see the world. Not least because they're completely misled about the world by their media, far more even than here. And they see it in these terms. We're going to liberate, we're the good guys. Da 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 da. It's look away time. This is what go get 'em, John, really means. It means thousands and thousands of dead and maimed children and civilians and others who are not trying to be terrorists against anybody. This is what war means, and if we don't understand that's what it means, we're going to agree to it without realizing the consequences. This is what war is. 7,000 at least civilian casualties in that bombing. Bloody head blown off of a child. Do you ever see that on CNN or the BBC? No. So we get a completely unrealistic view of what is actually going on. Do you know something? Do you know what I got sick of? Do you support our troops? Do I support our troops? You said, of course I support the troops. We always support the troops. I tell you what, it's about time someone said it. Sod in hell do I support the troops. Not when they're doing that, I don't. How come if you do that in uniform you get a bloody medal, if you do it in jeans and t-shirt you get a life sentence? How is that? This is one newspaper report. Just a few weeks ago, Aisha, a young and fragile Iraqi girl, was looking forward to her 7th birthday this coming May. Those aspirations were quickly snuffed out by a US bomb that literally sucked away the insides of her skull, leaving her behind the grotesque remains of a shattered dream. The blood that flowed from her small, frail body into the dirt beneath made sure of that. Looking at this, America. From bombs dropped incessantly on a helpless population to civilians strafed by US aircraft to women and children shredded to pieces by gunning ground troops, this is not a war. This is the terrorism that is the worst kind, for it is purveyed under the cloak of legitimacy and in the name of a great democracy. What they did, they were dropping cluster bombs that are actually banned, that cut people apart when they explode, and all these thousands of razor-sharp pieces go off. This is from the Asia Times. A spokesman for the International Committee of the Red Cross in Italy described the scene in Hilla as a horror, dozens of severed bodies and scattered limbs. Journalists found babies cut in half, amputated limbs, kids with their faces a web of deep cuts caused by American shell fire and cluster bombs. Robert Fisk, great journalist in The Independent, described the mortuary as a butcher's shop of chopped up corpses. Do you know what cluster bombs do? This is what they do. This is what they do, America, and anyone in this country that believes it's justified. Oh, this is a wonderful, I support our troops. This is what one of them said in the correspondent program on BBC Two a few weeks ago. We bomb them, it's cool to me because I like explosions and stuff like that, but I don't get to see the actual explosion, and that's what I want to see. But I guess when we get closer to Baghdad, we'll see more of that. Liberators. Liberators. And then you have the soldiers. The soldiers are just fodder. I have a lovely piece written by a soldier in America. He was a top soldier. He won many awards. And this is back in the 1930s. He was twice awarded the Medal of Honor, a guy called Major General Smedley Butler. And when his career was finished, please listen to this, soldiers of Britain and America, for God's sake, wake up. He said this: like all members of the military profession, I never had a thought of my own until I left the service. My mental faculties remained in suspended animation while I obeyed the orders of higher-ups. This is typical with everyone in military service. I helped make Mexico, especially Tampico, safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the national city bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped with the raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the international banking house of Brown Brothers Harriman, the Bush Company, in 1909, 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916. In China, I helped to see that Standard Oil went its way unmolested. That is what the troops are being used for now in the Middle frickin' East. And again, suppress the effect on those doing the killing, because that's bad for selling the next war. This is a surgeon in Germany working on the troops. It really is disgustingly sanitized television. They have lost arms, legs, hands, they have been burned, they've had significant brain injuries and peripheral nerve damage. These are young kids that are going to be, in some regards, changed for life. I don't feel that people realize that. Why? Because they're not supposed to. It's bad for the movie. And then we have this. Do you remember that? There was a photographic journalist that traveled with this American group who was quoted widely in Le Monde of how they were shooting civilians who just like, pigeon shoots as they came into Baghdad, and he watched it. And these were the heroes that came and pulled the bloody statue down. This was totally orchestrated even before the war started. It just happened that the Palestine Hotel with all the international journalists was looking out across that square, and that's the one they picked. Why? Because they wanted to create the image, freedom, liberation. So you have all these people. There were crowds of people. Hey, look, hold the close-up. Well, here's the square while it was going on. Huh? And then, what was this? London Evening Standard. You can trust the London Evening Standard. Would they tell you a lie? Where have all these people come from? And why is he there as well? Is he a shapeshifter, or does he just move quick? If you go to my website, someone's done an analysis of this front page and gone into the detail and shown where the joins are. The same people. Freedom! Movie, freedom. It's about liberation. Don't think that it's about killing people and oil. No. Look, how could there be that many? They were never there. Where do they come from? Then there's Jessica Lynch. They invented this story about this heroic girl. I mean, I feel sorry for her because she only joined the military because they paid her college fees. She wanted to be a teacher. And it was a way of doing it. Get the college fees paid, and then she finds herself deployed to Iraq. There was a BBC documentary recently, but if you look at the press coverage as well, of people that have talked to the doctors, very nice people that looked after her after this incident. And what the spinners said was that she was stabbed in the leg, she was shot, but she kept shooting right to the death. Well, why didn't they kill her then if she was shooting so many Iraqis, these terrible people? And what the doctors said was that it was a road traffic accident. The vehicle turned over, that's why she was injured. And what happened was that the doctor had heard that she was going to be moved to Baghdad, and she was frightened, and he felt sorry for her. So he said to an ambulance driver, look, put her in the back of the ambulance and drive her to the nearest American checkpoint and hand her over, because I don't want to move to Baghdad. I don't know what's going to happen to her there, right? So the ambulance driver puts her in the back, drives towards the checkpoint. The Americans open fire, makes him turn back. The next day, the troops go in with the heroic rescue. And there's nobody there but bloody doctors and nurses. And they actually tied patients with really bad injuries where they couldn't walk to the bed. I mean, excuse me. It's a this. And then there's the pig trough. Who has got the major contracts to rebuild the Iraq that they have bombed? Halliburton's got the major contract. Cheney's company, and Bechtel, major Illuminati company, that is a major player in that is a guy called George Shultz, who was the advisor to the Bush campaign for president. And then there's these are troops scraping gold off the doors of these places, and of course the looting and all that stuff. And then there's this guy, Ahmed Watch Your Pockets Shalabi, of the Iraqi National Congress, who fled Iraq in about 58, went to Jordan, had to apparently flee in the back of in the trunk of a car because he was wanted for a massive bank fraud, for which in his absence he was sentenced to 22 years imprisonment. Comes to Britain, starts the Iraqi National Congress, which was funded to the tune of $325,000 a year by the CIA. And then suddenly he returns, and of course they want him and his international Iraqi National Congress group in power, just as they want a puppet government in power in Afghanistan. Newspeak, Orwell's brilliant term: war is peace, death is freedom, occupation is liberation, we don't want your oil. Reverse everything, you get the truth. But of course he's a Christian man, George. He's a Christian man. He wouldn't do that. This is the man, when he was killing everything that moved in executions as governor of Texas, said, kill them all and let God sort them out. Hey, wanted for crimes against humanity and terrorism. That's what these people, and they haven't even started yet. We are seeing history repeat itself. And my God, let's repeat what happened in the past when people walked away in denial. It's not going on, I can ignore it. He actually said if this was a dictatorship, it would be a heck of a lot easier as long as I'm the dictator. Well, he's not the dictator, but those dictating to him are. What we're basically seeing as they head for the next place, because they want Iran, they're now preparing us for that, and Syria, and Lebanon, and Libya, and they want to go off. Why do they want to go off to North Korea? Because it's borders into China and can start that whole thing rolling. Iran, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Libya, Lebanon, North Korea, China, they've all been named by these neocons in the last few weeks as other countries that need to be democratized and taken away from terrorism. What it means is we want to replace one dictatorship with ours. And then you've got these people. We'll have an hour break for dinner in a second. But then we've got these people. Neo-Labour, because it's not new. Neo-Labour, that's what it is. I mean, what's going on here? Do you remember when Peter Hain used to protest against apartheid and injustice and used to take part in war protests? He's now in his dark suit justifying every war that Blair says he wants to wage. He's centralizing power massively in Europe, saying it's a tidying up exercise. We've got the firebrand from Sheffield who's joined the club, who is now taking freedoms away and introducing the agenda through identity cards. We've got Jeff Goon Hoon, the defense secretary, who just does whatever his master tells him. We've got Jack Strawman Straw, who again is just repeating what Blair says all the time and never going or questioning anything. Well, John Prescott, yeah, right. And then we've got John Prescott, two Jags, hey, man of the people. And then we've got Peter Mandelson, the Prince of Darkness, as they call him. And any party that has Peter Mandelson as an MP loses all right to call itself a party of the people. And now we're seeing the process of stopping questions being asked, of putting pressure on people to shut up and not question what's happening. As you see, they've succeeded with me massively. More, I promised never to question authority. I promised never to bring up my rights. Now, why are they doing this? I tell you what, let's go back to Nazi Germany in a second and get a quote on it. Those that are protesting, like these Americans in Auckland against the Iraqi war at the time, they were hit by rubber bullets by these people. So when you kill people, you get a medal. When you kill lots of people, you're a hero in the White House. When you protest against killing people, they shoot at you. Alice in Wonderland. But let's go back. to this. Why are they doing this? Suppressing dissent. Nazi propaganda minister Dr. Joseph Goebbels. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and/or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus, by extension, the truth becomes the greatest enemy of the state. But we're in a period now, which I'm going to talk about more when I get into some really bizarre stuff when we've had dinner, where the wake-up call is coming. 1 million people on the streets against the war, and vast numbers of them never done that in their lives before, says something. But what we need to do is not stop dividing and ruling those that are against what is going on and fighting among ourselves. Because it doesn't matter if you are of the left, if you are of the right, if you are of the center, if you're black, white, or pink with blue spots. We are all the targets of this agenda. Peacefully, this is the greatest contribution, including those behind him, to peace and freedom in the world that could possibly happen. The toppling of George W. Bush, more important, the exposing of those that control him and Blair. Because if we stand up and start talking about this and refuse to be bowed into keeping our heads down and their mouths shut, we will prove Goebbels right. The truth is the greatest enemy of the lie. And all we get from official sources is the lie, and it's not that they lie and then they do a bit of truth and then they lie. They lie, lie, lie because they're creating cover stories for the real deal behind it. It's coming to light, and it's a great time to be alive. If we have an hour, an hour for lunch, and then I want to go into some really bizarre stuff about how we can bring about this and what the matrix really is, because they know what it is and they don't want us to know. But for now, thank you very much. Thank you.